Hi everyone, I'm Ahmad Sadiq from Land Trust Title of Central Florida, and let's talk title. Today I wanted to talk to you about one of the things that we do during our title processing. So we are obviously going to be running a title search on the property, which is going to include information on the property itself, the buyer and the seller. But a very important component of our title process is also pulling a municipal lien search on most of our transactions. So the municipal lien search is going to cover four different things. We're going to look at whether the property taxes for the property have been paid or if there are any years that are missing in terms of the property taxes. We're going to take a look to see if there's any outstanding utility bills that haven't been paid by this owner or previous owner. We're going to see if there's any open or expired permits related to the property. And we're also going to see if there's any code violations related to the property. So let's talk a little bit about why each of these is important. We'll start from the top and we'll talk about the property taxes associated with the property. Obviously that's going to be important because the property taxes are lienable. So if the property taxes are not paid, the county can issue a tax deed and that can become a tax sale, and the actual ownership of the property can be lost as a result of that. So it's important that we make sure that we're collecting back due taxes at the time of closing so that the sellers pay what they're responsible for and the buyers take the property and are not responsible to pay any of the back due taxes that existed from a time prior to their ownership. We're also looking for back due utility bills. Now this is important because there are a lot of counties, a lot of cities and municipalities in Florida that do lien on properties. What I mean by that is they can place liens on the properties for any back due utility payments. So we need to make sure that if there are any back due utility payments that we take care of this. This can become an issue though sometimes because if the prior title company or law office missed the municipal lien search or missed the fact that there was a utility payment that needed to be paid, sometimes that could leave our seller on our transaction holding the bag for a utility payment for someone else that owned the property prior to them taking ownership of the property. So that can become an issue at closing as well. Open and expired permits. These are important because we want to make sure that the buyers take the property without having to expend their own resources to close out things that the seller may have started. So if there's any roof work or air conditioner was repaired or there was any other permit that was pulled related to the property, we want to make sure that those permits are closed out by the time the buyer moves in and takes ownership of the property so the buyer's not left holding the bag to pay those fees to close that out. Now, it's important because our real estate contract, the as-is real estate contract, doesn't necessarily require the seller to close out the permits, but what it does require is for the seller to facilitate the buyer being able to close out those permits, in particular if those permits existed as a result of the transaction or if it existed as a result of any work that the buyer was requesting the seller to do. And lastly, and I would say most importantly, is open code violations. Open code violations can exist if the work that's done on the property is unpermitted, and if it's done by someone who's not a real or true licensed contractor. A lot of times the work can become code violations because the work's not done properly. So if a roof is not built to code, or an air conditioner is installed, or pool equipment, or whatever it might be, if it's done and it's done improperly and it's done to the point where it's an actual code violation, what that's going to mean for the new owner is that not only do they have to take care of all those things again, but those code violations can very quickly turn into code liens. And if the matter gets brought up before the Code Enforcement Bureau, then the Code Enforcement Bureau will place a lien on the property, and that lien will then accumulate fees on a daily basis. And those fees can accumulate very quickly and become a very hefty fine that needs to be taken care of before the property can be sold or that lien can force a foreclosure. So the municipal lien search is a very important component of making sure that the buyer is aware of any issues. And the issues that show up on the municipal lien search are not necessarily title issues, but they are all issues that can lead to title defects down the road. So it's important that the seller and the buyer are both aware of what's going on and that these issues are taken care of prior to closing. Again, guys, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next time.